This day, 50 years ago, we Nigerians saw the end of a bitter and sanguinary civil war in which two sides of our country had been pitched against each other for fully 30 months. A war which had, directly and indirectly, taken the lives of millions of our citizens and had left the lives of more millions shattered. I assess that we are assembled to mark this day for two important reasons. That is, apart from celebrating and honoring the ones whom we lost, the millions whom we lost in the Civil War. First, we are assembled in gratitude to God that our Civil War came to an end when it did, and that it did not continue beyond that day to go on inflicting more deaths and more wounds on us, citizens and peoples of Nigeria, and of our country as a corporate entity in the world. Secondly, and more importantly, we elders, leaders, rulers, and citizens of Nigeria are assembled here today before the world and before the ruler of all peoples and nations to assert that we, the people of this country called Nigeria, will never again manage the affairs of our country in such a way as to lead to war among us. It is hugely providential that we are registering this resolve today before the world and before the creator and ruler of the world. I say providentially because as an elderly citizen of this country now, and as a citizen who was already a young university teacher in the time of our Civil War, I have good reasons to fear today that the character of the affairs of our country these days and the prevailing mood among us Nigerians are chillingly similar to the character of the affairs of our country in the months leading to our Civil War. The government of our country is being managed in ways that make it look like an exclusive preserve of a particular minority. There seems to be an agenda being pursued now to establish this minority in all positions of command in the executive, administrative, judicial, and security services of our country. The voices of the majority register protests continually and are continually disrespected and ignored. The state of law is patently being subsumed to the needs of that agenda, with seriously damaging effects on human rights. These situations are inevitably fostering among the peoples of the Middle Belt and the peoples of the south of our country the feeling that they are being reduced to the status of conquered peoples in Nigeria. Meanwhile, some persons belonging to the would-be minority conquerors are loudly threatening to overrun and seize the ancestral homelands of the said peoples of the Middle Belt and the South, and are actually pushing for that conquest with their acts of destruction of farms and villages, acts of wanton killings of people, acts of kidnapping, acts of intimidation, and the act of bringing masses of their ethnic kinsmen from countries beyond Nigeria to seize and possess land by force and intimidation in Nigeria. And meanwhile, the government of Nigeria seems to be purposed not to defend the threatened peoples of Nigeria, but to aid the process of the conquest. The outcome of all this, as we assemble here today, the outcome of all this as we assemble here today is that our country is divided again into two hostile parts. The minority that, the first part is the minority that seems bent on conquest and ethnic cleansing, and the majority that is striving with great handicaps to preserve their homelands and their existence and integrity as peoples. Meanwhile also, as a manifest corollary to these fearsome developments, the dreaded fundamentalist terrorist movement, ISIS, after being vanquished in the Middle East, has established its new strong base in a part of Nigeria, and from there has proclaimed West Africa as its new province of ISWAP. The probability has become high, therefore, that ISIS might make a junction with a minority pushing for the conquest of the majority in Nigeria, that Nigeria might thus be ravaged by ISIS, that Nigeria might soon be the base from which ISIS will push to conquer West Africa and all of Africa, with the purpose of turning Africa into a mighty base of fundamentalist terror against the rest of the civilized world. But in the spirit of today, in the spirit of never again plunging our country into civil war, we can and we must terminate all this descent towards horrific war. We can and we must speedily move our country into the state of law, the state of mutual respect among our hundreds of peoples, and the state of order and peace in our country. The steps needed to accomplish this new order of existence for our country are obvious. First, the Nigerian ethnic nation that has been threatening other Nigerian ethnic nations, that has been engaging in invasion, destruction, disruption, and barbarous rampages in the homelands of other Nigerian peoples, and that has been mobilizing external forces to assist the conquest, the subjugation, and ethnic cleansing of other Nigerian ethnic nations, must now, immediately, stop and renounce this agenda to the satisfaction of all of us in Nigeria. And to the satisfaction of the rest of the civilized world. Secondly, after that agenda has been stopped and renounced by its authors, we Nigerians must restructure our country with the objective of giving our country a true and generally acceptable federal structure under which the different sections of our country will be able to develop their resources for the conquest of poverty in their domains. For the elevation of the quality of life of their citizens, and for their contributions to the overall prosperity of our country, Nigeria. To make restructuring produce a full and abiding good for our country, we must now, for the first time, correct a serious mistake which we have been making from the beginning, especially from the beginning of independent Nigeria. That mistake is that we have been ignoring the fundamental fact that underlies our country. The fundamental fact is that Nigeria is a country of many different nations. That's the truth. And nobody can change that. The fundamental fact is that Nigeria is a country of many different nations. Of nations that are, in some respects, radically different in their cultures, their political traditions, their perceptions of acceptable reality, their expectations, and their desires and goals. Ignoring this fundamental, we have almost continuously let our country wobble and teeter on the brink of violent implosion. And we have continually inflicted serious pains upon ourselves. We fought and ended a civil war, but we have never really moved immeasurably away from the brinks of civil war. We fought and ended a civil war, but we have never really moved measurably away from the brinks of civil war. We have now seen enough to be convinced that we must not continue to ignore the fundamental. The fundamental will not go away. It is we who must harmonize the structure and management of our country to the fundamental. Refusing to recognize and harmonize with the fundamental will certainly continue our country's slide towards dissolution. And it might soon complete that process. Consciously recognizing and harmonizing with the fundamental would almost certainly give our country a long and stable lease of life. But that means that if we do agree and choose to continue to live together as one country, then we all sections of our country must together work out, agree upon, and thoroughly respect the agreed conditions and demands of our living together as one country. We must now absolutely and without further delay address our fundamental and let our country, our nations, and our people have peace. The mounting mood of our younger generations and our youth in this country, the overwhelming and most heavily distressed majority of our country's population, is definitely and increasingly impatiently demanding this. We are already in a crisis. If we, in our sober deference to reality, find that we can no longer hold together as one country, then let us together peacefully find a rational solution. And let us never again plunge into any kind of war among us. It is subhuman to continue to suffer pain and brutalization without trying to get rid of it. And it is insanity to keep doing a thing like the same way over and over, and yet expect a different outcome. I am confident that we Nigerians can make a success of doing the desperately needful now. And I wish our many people and our large number of citizens the best. I thank you all.